In 1453, a 21-year-old sultan captured a city that had held out for 1,000 years. 100 years later, his empire controlled half the known world, from Hungary to Yemen, from Algeria to Iran. The Ottoman Empire lasted 623 years. That's longer than the Roman Empire. That's longer than any other empire in human history. It survived the Crusades, the Black Death, the Age of Discovery, and the Napoleonic Wars. But how did a small nomadic tribe from Anatolia create an empire that changed world history? Today, we'll open this box of ages and discover how the Ottomans conquered the world, and why they eventually lost everything. To understand the Ottoman Empire, we must go back to the 13th century. The Mongols had destroyed the Seljuk Sultanate in Anatolia, and in its ruins, dozens of small Turkic principalities, beyliks, emerged. One of these beyliks was particularly small, just a few thousand nomads in northwestern Anatolia. They were called the Ottomans, after their leader Osman I, who ruled from 1299 to 1326. But the Ottomans had two advantages. First, strategic location. Their territory bordered the Byzantine Empire, which was weak and fragmented after the Fourth Crusade. Second, Gaza, holy war against infidels. This attracted warriors from across the Islamic world. Osman I and his successors, Orhan, Murad I, Bayezid I, transformed the small beylik into a regional power. They captured Bursa in 1326, Adrianople in 1361, and for the first time crossed the Dardanelles Strait, entering Europe. By 1400, the Ottomans controlled most of the Balkans and Anatolia. But their expansion was halted by Tamerlane, the Mongol conqueror who crushed the Ottoman army at the Battle of Ankara in 1402 and captured Sultan Bayezid I. It seemed the Ottoman Empire had died before it was born. But it survived, and 50 years later, it returned, stronger than ever. In 1451, the 21-year-old Mehmed II ascended the Ottoman throne. Young, ambitious, obsessed with one idea: capturing Constantinople. The city that had withstood Arab sieges, crusades, and hundreds of other attacks, but was now a shadow of its former glory. Constantinople was superbly fortified. The Theodosian walls, a triple line of defense, were considered impregnable. But Mehmed had an advantage: artillery. He hired the Hungarian engineer Urban, who created a gigantic cannon 9 meters long, firing stone balls weighing half a ton. On April 2, 1453, an Ottoman army of 80,000 began the siege, but the walls held. Then Mehmed did the impossible. He ordered 70 ships dragged overland, bypassing the Byzantine fleet, across the hilly terrain of Galata. On May 29, 1453, the final assault began. After hours of fighting, the Ottomans broke through the Kerkoporta Gate, a forgotten postern that the defenders had left open. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos, died in battle, having cast off his imperial insignia. That evening, Mehmed II entered Hagia Sophia and converted it into a mosque. Thus fell the 1,000-year Byzantine Empire. Thus was born the Ottoman. 70 years after the conquest of Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire reached its zenith under Sultan Suleiman I, who ruled from 1520 to 1566. Europeans called him the Magnificent. The Ottomans called him Kanuni, the lawgiver. Under Suleiman, the empire reached maximum expansion, 5.2 million square kilometers. It controlled 3 continents: Europe, Hungary, Romania, Greece, Bulgaria; Asia, Syria, Iraq, Arabia, parts of Iran; Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria. But Suleiman was not only a conqueror, he was a reformer. Under him, the Ottoman Empire reached the pinnacle of architecture. The great architect Sinan built the Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, still considered a masterpiece of Ottoman architecture. The empire prospered economically. It controlled the Silk Road and the spice trade. Istanbul became Europe's largest city with a population of over 500,000, and the Ottoman fleet dominated the Mediterranean Sea. But even at the peak of power, problems were brewing within the empire that would lead to its fall 300 years later. And one of these problems was the Janissaries, an elite army that would eventually become a threat to the sultans themselves. The secret of Ottoman conquests was a military system with no medieval analog. The key element was the Janissaries, an elite infantry composed of Christian boys forcibly converted to Islam and trained in the art of war. The devshirme system, the blood tax, worked like this. Every 4 years, Ottoman collectors took the best Christian boys from the Balkans. They were taught Turkish, Islam, and military arts. The best became Janissaries. The most talented, viziers and governors. The Janissaries were Europe's first standing army, centuries before the appearance of regular armies in the West. They were among the first to use firearms en masse and were renowned for their discipline. In battle, they stood motionless until the Sultan gave the signal to attack. The Ottoman fleet was also a formidable force. Under the command of the legendary Admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa, the Ottomans defeated the united fleet of the Holy League at the Battle of Preveza in 1538 and established control over the entire Mediterranean. But this system had a dark side. By the 17th century, the Janissaries had become a privileged caste. They engaged in trade, married, and their sons inherited status. Instead of an elite army, they became a threat to the sultans, overthrowing unwanted rulers and dictating their will. The Janissary Corps was finally abolished in 1826 when Sultan Mahmud II ordered them shot from cannons. By then, they were no longer an army, but a problem. By the 18th century, the Ottoman Empire began losing territory. European powers, Austria, Russia, France, Britain, pressed the Ottomans from all sides. In 1699, the Ottomans signed the Treaty of Karlowitz, ceding Hungary to Austria. This was the first major territorial loss. But the real catastrophe began in the 19th century. The Russian Empire fought 12 wars with the Ottomans over 2 centuries, taking Crimea, the Caucasus, Bessarabia. The Greek War of Independence in 1821 to 1829 showed that the empire could no longer control its territories. European diplomats dubbed the Ottoman Empire the sick man of Europe. Everyone expected its death and argued over who would inherit the spoils. Britain and France even fought against Russia in the Crimean War of 1853 to 1856 to prevent the Russians from gaining too much from the weakened empire. In the 19th century, the Ottomans tried to reform the empire. The Tanzimat, the era of reforms, brought modernization of the army, judicial system, and education. But it was too late. Nationalist movements in the Balkans, Serbs, Greeks, Bulgarians, Romanians, declared independence one after another. By the early 20th century, the Ottoman Empire controlled only a small fraction of its former territories. But the worst was yet to come. World War I. In 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered World War I on the side of Germany and Austria-Hungary. This was the decision that sealed its fate. The Ottomans opened several fronts: the Caucasus against Russia, Sinai and Mesopotamia against Britain, Gallipoli against the Entente. At Gallipoli in 1915, the Ottoman army under the command of Mustafa Kemal stopped the British-French invasion. This victory made Kemal a national hero. But on other fronts, the empire was losing. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire had capitulated. Under the terms of the Armistice of Mudros, the Allies occupied Istanbul, Izmir, and other cities. The empire's territories were divided between Britain and France under the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, created back in 1916. Iraq, Palestine, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, all these territories became British and French mandates. The borders drawn by European diplomats still exist today and are the source of many modern conflicts. It seemed the Ottoman Empire was dead for good. But in Anatolia, a resistance movement began. Mustafa Kemal, the hero of Gallipoli, led the resistance movement against occupation. In 1919, he landed in Samsun on the Black Sea and began the Turkish War of Independence. By 1922, his army had driven the Greeks from Izmir and liberated Istanbul. On November 1, 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate was abolished. On October 29, 1923, the Republic of Turkey was proclaimed. Mustafa Kemal took the name Ataturk, father of the Turks, and began the radical modernization of the country. Ataturk separated religion from the state, introduced the Latin alphabet instead of Arabic, gave women the right to vote, banned fezzes and turbans. He created a secular republic from the fragments of an Islamic empire, but the legacy of the Ottoman Empire did not disappear. It lives in the architecture of Istanbul, in Sinan's mosques, in the Topkapi and Dolmabahce palaces. It lives in the cuisine, kebabs, baklava, Turkish coffee. It lives in languages, thousands of Arabic words in Turkish, Persian, Urdu, Albanian. The Ottoman Empire shaped the modern Middle East, the Balkans, North Africa. Conflicts in Syria, Iraq, Libya, Cyprus, all have roots in the Ottoman past. The empire fell, but its shadow is longer than the life of any state. Because the Ottoman Empire didn't just exist, it shaped the world we live in today. Subscribe to the Box of Ages. There are still many boxes of ages waiting to be opened.